This conference will now be recorded.
All right. Hello, everybody.
Hi, Kristen.
We will call this meeting to order now. And we have 4 of our members here, but we are missing Cassette and Minaj. And Sharon will be joining us late, probably in about 15 minutes, I think. But we'll begin without her. The first thing on the agenda is to review and adopt this agenda for November 8th. And so I will, does anyone have any additions or comments on the agenda before we approve it? No. Okay,
No,
I will move to adopt this agenda, and if someone could second it, please. Corinne, thank you. All in favor? Okay,
Yes.
so adoption of tonight's agenda is carried. Next item is approval of minutes from our last meeting, which was on October 18th, not that long ago. Does anyone have any comments on the minutes from our last meeting?
They look fine.
Okay, very good. So I will move to approve those minutes. Could I have a seconder?
I'll second.
Thank you, Gloria. All in favor? Yes.
Yes.
Carried. Do we have anyone who needs to disclose any pecuniary interest this evening? Nope.
Nope.
Very good.
Nope.
Treasurer's report. Barbara, any updates since last meeting?
No updates whatsoever. The only thing
Okay.
is that the council would be looking to doing budget early in January, I understand. And we should perhaps start putting our heads together and thinking what it is we would want to do and how much it would cost, so we can prepare it for the next meeting.
Yes, that's a good point, and thank you for reminding us about that. Why don't we all put our heads together between now and the next meeting to think about input for that? And Barbara, maybe if you could email all of us the current budget that we had for this year, and maybe a brief note about where we stand in terms of our spending this year, so that we can all have a good gauge on what our budget was and how much we actually spent. And because of COVID, it was virtually nothing, I think. So, but maybe just let us know the official numbers before next meeting so we can comment on that. Okay, I think that's it for the general items. And tonight we have Ralph Manctolo with us, who is going to give us a presentation on the mono streams and bridges. And Ralph, I'd like to thank you for coming and sharing this with us. We're looking forward to it. And I understand you're going to have some screen sharing presentation with us.
Yes, Andrew is going to run the slideshow, and I'll just ask him to move it ahead.
Thank you. Thanks, Laura. Thank you, John. Bye.
Just wait until Andrew gets it. There we are.
Great.
So thanks very much for asking me to come and present. It's a pleasure to share what we've been doing.
Thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
This is a project that started actually about 2 years ago, almost to the day, when the council discussed the idea of having signage on our waterways. And it was approved unanimously. And so I've been working on it more or less since that time. COVID has made it a bit difficult. Next, please. This is what we're talking about. This is a sign on the south branch of the Nottawasaga, something fairly simple. It usually placed to be placed just in front of the bridge. Sometimes it'd be 2. If it's a long bridge, you'd have another one down at the far side. Next. After this was approved, it was brought to my attention that the council of the day back in June of 2000 had tried to accomplish the same thing, and they instructed the staff to place signs at appropriate road crossings. But this was not completed because there was conflict of opinions about proper names. So I would do this with a little bit of trepidation, but with my eyes open. Next, please. Just a little background. What's the purpose of signage? Why should we have signage? Is it important? We cross over the stream and there you see it, and there's a river. So what? Well, names are really very important to us. When I meet somebody and I say, hello, Kirsten, my name is Ralph, and she says, I'm Kirsten, that means something to me. That's the first sort of step in getting to know you, if you like. And so it's important with our geography also to know names, if there are names. It's a step in appreciating their importance and importance of our natural heritage. In Mono, it's quite unique, and I'll show you a couple of maps in terms of the number of waterways we have and the way that they're distributed. Next, please. So there are actually 17 different name streams in Mono, and 41 road crossings. That is to say that a road crosses a waterway, either a bridge, and sometimes it's a culvert. We make use of very large culverts in some locations, which is a lot less expensive than a bridge. So next, Andrew. This is a map, and I don't expect you to be able to read it, but it just put on to get you sort of an overview. All of the blue lines are rivers, and each of the streams or creeks, and each of the numbers represent a road crossing of a streak of some significance. Next. Mono is quite unique in that there are 4 different watersheds that drain Mono. In other words, a watershed is the area of land and water that drains into one particular stream. So we have the Humber River watershed, the Credit River watershed to the south. The Nottawasaga River is our main watershed, and it involves probably 75 or 80% of Mono. And the Grand is very, very small. We'll just look at the map again and identify them. Next. So down at the bottom right, you see, thank you, Andrew. This is the watershed of the Humber River, and it extends up to the Fifth Side Road here. And there's a number of significant crossings in this area. And over to the west, this is the Credit River watershed, and it involves the rest of the south, and it flows out into the Credit River, whereas the Humber flows into the Humber, and both of these, of course, go south into Lake Ontario. So if you draw a line right across roughly where the Fifth Side Road is, that is the divide between water flowing to the south and water flowing to the north. All the rest, except for a small part to the west here. Andrew, there's a little colored area that's just above the 15th Side Road. If you see the blind line sign, it's just to the left of that. Can you find that with your pointer? Anyway, that's the Grand River area, and it's that's it, exactly, fairly small. All the rest is the Nottawasaga. And there are many named creeks and streams there. And interestingly, they more or less run from west to east. So they cross many lines. So in going up and down the various roads of the town, you can identify the same stream at various points. It gives you a sense of geography, I think. Next. So I visited all 40 of these crossings and discussed with Mike Dunmore and Matt Donor, and some with other staff, including Mark Early, the signs that we would use. And we selected four criteria. Some of them are very small. Some of them are just a sort of a 12-inch culvert under the road, and some of them you can't see at many seasons because they dry up. So it had to have enough size that you could it from the road, and usually they were a minimum of 4 or 5 feet in width. Occasionally we would choose something because of its hydrological significance. In other words, it's an important point in the county. An example of this is the Bailey Creek. If you go back to, can you go back up to the map for a minute? So down here, just it's above the Cliff Side Road, you'll see a little, it looks like 4 or 5 little creeks. They're all joining into one. And this is the headwaters of the Bailey Creek. The 7th line, Cliff Side Road below it. And so this is a very small creek, but it was significant because the Bailey Creek starts here and it goes on for another 35 kilometers to the east before it joins with the Nottawasaga River. Could you carry on, please? So getting the correct name, this was a real interesting challenge. The town had some maps with names on as a starting point and had some other records with respect to the previous attempt to apply signs. Many of the town staff, as you know, have been around for a long time and have a lot of Mark early, I'm not sure how long, maybe 25 and 30 years, I think. Mike Dunmore is very much in touch with the geography of the town. As you probably know, he's the head of Public Works. I spoke to each of the conservation authorities, the appropriate people, and there were many longtime residents who had family histories that went back a number of generations, and that was often quite useful. In some, it was time of COVID when you couldn't knock on anybody's door, so I left letters in various mailboxes if there was a controversial sort of a question about it, such as Pendletons. It's very controversial up there. There's 3 creeks that any one of them could be Pendletons. And the neighbors, a couple of neighbors were quite helpful in replying and talking to me. Next. So in some situations, we would have more than one name, and there are three streams, in fact, which would have what we might call an official name and then a local name. So it might be called officially the North Branch of the Nottawasaga River, but locally known as the Elbe Creek, or locally known as Primrose Creek, or locally known as Pendleton. So both names were put on the signs. Next, please. Large crossings or large bridges will get a sign at both ends, and smaller ones would just get one that was placed close to the middle. Cost was a concern. Next. We did get funding. It's an Ontario government grant called the Main Street Revitalization Initiative, and that covered most of the costs. Next. So all the signage was picked up about a year ago, but because of COVID, we were unable to get work done. And Public Works was significantly stressed by the many things that were going on. And in October, Public Works placed all the signage on 32 waterways. Next. So this is the type of signage that was placed. Thanks, Andrew, for the photograph. Next. This is one of the historical bridges. As you probably have noticed, that the trend in bridges and roads is to make a solid barriers on both sides of the road, so you really can't see the creek, which I personally find disappointing, because I like to look through the metal framework and see the creek down below. I guess it's a matter of some safety. Next. So in this situation, this is a creek on a bridge, I should say, on a bit of a curve. So we've got 2 signs, the one on your right here, and if you look way down here, just besides this far tree, there's the second sign. That's the end of my presentation. Thanks for the opportunity of bringing it to you.
Thank you, Ralph. That was really, really interesting, I thought. Um, I have a few comments. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to comment or ask Ralph about the presentation?
Thank you for doing that. Thank you for you and your team, Ralph, doing that. Yeah, interesting. I had
Thank
no
you.
idea. Yeah, so much I don't know about our little town of learning more.
Well, you know, that's I'm a newbie, if you'd like, here. Although we bought property in 1983, we lived to work there. But I moved up here about a decade ago full time, and then started to travel around and see things. And before I just drive to my farm and live at the farm for a weekend, go back to Toronto and say, oh, another week. Toronto. So we do have such an interesting geography. And becoming a counselor was really very, very good, because suddenly I'm driving out the roads and visiting people, and I'm getting to know Mono, and wow, we got all these streams there, and what are their names? So that's sort of
Yeah.
my
Ralph,
wow.
Ralph, you talked a little bit about naming them, but how did you figure out what the names were? I mean, not only the official names, but also the local names.
Well, there was a map which they created back in 2000, which had some names on it, suggested names. So that was a really good starting point. I don't know whether they just gave up or what happened, but maybe the answer is to ask a counselor to do it, and not the overworked staff, just the overworked counselor. But anyway, it was all these sources. The Conservation Authority was very good, particularly in Ottawa. In fact, so was Humber, the Toronto Regional Conservation Authority. They had good insight into names. Often the small names, there are a number of other small names are around. And I looked at the crossings and they were so small, such as Elb Creek. But the Elder Creek, I should say. So I'm wandering around, but I don't know if I've answered your question.
Did you, it must have been fascinating talking to some of the locals who maybe had known some historical names for the creeks that maybe weren't showing up on the maps. Did that happen?
Yes, it did. Up in the northwest, there was quite a bit of discussion because a creek went through somebody's farm, and this person had the multi-generation history of the people at the farm, and so I was able to check on this name that had been suggested to me, and nobody had ever heard of it up there, so we dropped it. That's
I mean, we are the Heritage Committee. We actually spend most of our time talking about built heritage, and this is more natural heritage, but it all plays into the heritage picture because, 100 years ago or 150, almost 200 years ago when Mono was first being settled, of course, people lived a lot more closely to the land, and they probably knew these streams very, very well, much better than we do. They were much more in touch with the streams and the waterways and where they flowed to, and they were more dependent on them. And now we just drive over them at 80 kilometers an hour and don't notice them. So I think that knowing the names of the streams and understanding where they start and where they flow to and how do they all join up and where do they go after that really, really helps to understand our geography and our sense of place. So I find this kind of thing really fascinating. And I'm wondering I'm assuming other people do. And personally, I think this would be a great presentation to do in a public forum, where people who are just the general public who would be interested in this sort of thing rather than just, the committees or the council or so on. Have you thought at all about whether it could be presented to the public somehow, whether it's in a meeting or in a flyer or I don't know, some kind of format?
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. I have thought of putting something on our webpage, which I'll probably get done in a few days' time. But we do have meetings probably twice a year. Usually, it used to be in person, where we would meet with the various members of the community and sometimes present something. So maybe that could be a possibility.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would really enjoy learning about this. But I did have another question. When you were out looking at all these streams, what was your general feeling, or did you have any observations about the health of the streams?
That's a pretty my observations are pretty gross because I didn't do any testing or anything, but the streams all look good and clean. No garbage that I could remember. Sometimes I'd see fish in them. They're really one of the jewels of our natural heritage.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a number of conversations with Fred Nix about the stream that runs right through Mono Center. I don't know if you know, do you know the name of that one? I don't even know the name of it off the top of my head, but maybe you do now.
Well, there is a creek there, it's called Mono Center Creek.
Ah, okay, that's tricky.
It is.
Well, Fred and I had brought to Fred's attention that a lot of the runoff from the road in the village was going straight into the stream, and that really concerned me quite a bit. I don't know if he's discussed that with you, but it's been an issue for basically ever since they paved the shoulders and they put in what's the word I'm looking for? Not a culvert, a swale, directing all the runoff right into that stream. And there, because there's so much parking along the sides of the roads and in the parking lot of the Monocliffs Inn, and those cars are all dripping oil and gas and who knows what they're dripping, but after a good rain, you could see all the oil and gas pooling on the road, and it was running right into the stream, and that's a pretty big, healthy stream that goes right down into the Nottawasaga.
Right.
So I would really like to revisit that with Fred or with council. I really think that needs to be addressed. I mean, that's obviously something for another meeting, but it did make me wonder about how you were finding the health of the streams in general.
Let me look at that and see what's going on there. The Mono Center Creek is actually quite a long vertical creek, which runs vertical north to south, and runs between the third and the fourth line. So I think that's just the one you referred to, but I'm not positive.
Yeah, you're right. Well, I'd be happy to look at it if you want to come up to the village sometime and we can take a look together at it, and I can explain to you a little more clearly and show you the how the runoff's working there.
Yeah, I'd be pleased to do that. I'm not sure what the answer is there, but the first thing to do is to find out what the problem is.
Yeah, take a look, exactly. Okay. Does anyone have
Thank
anything
you.
else they'd like to share?
I just wanted to ask a question too. Ralph, you had said you had a chance and an opportunity to speak to a lot of the homeowners, and I'm just curious in terms of, some of their story with regards to just the natural heritage and any, changes or significant things that they've noticed, or, if there's a story there that can kind of be examined or looked into further with regards to just exploring natural heritage and, potentially noting some of that. And, if there's even any particular people that you met that you feel that would want to share those stories, especially when you talk about the generational stories that are there.
There's two of the people I spoke to, Bob Shirley and John Riley, and they're both very well connected. Of course, Bob Shirley is the waterman for Mono. So they had some interesting inputs. Often, I shouldn't say often, but over in the northwest, I was trying to sort out three creeks, which were variously called Relassie Creek, Pendleton Creek, or I've forgotten another one. And when I spoke to the local homeowner, he said, well, yeah, it goes right through here, but I just bought this place so many years ago and I don't know anything about the names of the creeks. So the history is being lost because people are, they're dying. And then, so that if you've
Yeah.
got someone who's been there for a long time, you get some interesting information. And it was a bit difficult to get that. There is a Pendleton who lives north of Highway 89. I tried to contact that person, but I think it was a COVID failure. You know, you weren't comfortable walking up to a farmyard and not banging on the door, saying, "Is John Pendleton here?"
Mm.
The other interesting thing that somebody brought up for me, he said, "Are you going to name the hills?" I sort of said, "What do you mean, name the hill?" Well, I mean, sign the hills. Well, he said the hills were very important in the early history of Mono. If you're driving a horse and a cart and you're going down a hill and it got out of control on a runaway horse, that was a potentially life-threatening experience. And so the hills were a very major part of our concerns. In some ways, more than the rivers, because they would have they'd have their bridge there. And also you had to get up the hills. So there's about 4 hills that actually have names on them, and the names are I think are I can't remember for sure all of them, but they were the names of local families, and everybody knew this was Knob Hill or whatever it was. And I may pursue this a little bit more. You may see some signs out there saying Knob Hill or Balls Hill, something like that.
I think that would be great. I know there's Elba Hill, and every time I drive
Yeah.
up Highway 10 up Elba Hill, again, you're going 100 kilometers an hour and you don't even notice it. But I do think in the old days, if you were driving a horse and carriage, that would have been a substantial hill, and it's no wonder that it actually was identified and named and everybody knew it. And the horses not on that hill, I don't think particularly, but I know on Caledon Mountain coming up here Ontario Street, the horses had to be changed out at the top of the hill, or even I think they even had them changed out halfway up the hill.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the hills did play a big role back
I
then.
know who you mean on Highway 9. That's a significant hill. This is the problem with our motor cars. You just press
Yeah.
the accelerator a little bit more and off you go. I remember I used to come, I'm on the 7th line, close to the 5th Side Road. And I would go across this to town, and for many times, I never really realized there were hills there until I rode my bike on it.
Yeah, right.
Mm.
There were 4 hills, and they were significant.
That's exactly right.
Yeah,
Well, when
yeah.
you're on a bike or you're hiking, you suddenly realize you're so much closer to the topography, and you become much more in touch with the land. Well, Ralph, thank you very much. That was really, I'm just so fascinated by that kind of thing. I'm sure we all enjoyed it, and I really appreciate you offering to come and talk to us about it, and I hope we can talk about it more.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank
All right, take care. All right, that was great. So we'll carry on with our meeting now. The municipal register is the next item on the agenda. And I know that I had tabled sort of drafted a resolution to council about the register before, but I've fleshed it out a little bit more. And I just would like to read it to everybody because I do want to send it off to Fred sometime in the next week or two to get it on the council agenda, either at probably 2 meetings from now. So I'd like to read the resolution, and maybe if anyone has any comments, please let me know. But we've got the list of 229 names, and the resolution is as follows. It says the Mono Heritage Advisory Committee at its meeting of October 18th, 2021 requests that council consider the following. The Mono Heritage Advisory Committee, under the authority of the Ontario Heritage Act, proposes the addition of 229 additional properties to the municipal register. The proposed list is attached. All properties on this list are old farmsteads, cemeteries, schools, or churches, and have been determined by the committee to have potential cultural heritage value, which may be of importance to the town of Mono. The registry serves to alert the Heritage Committee of any properties or part thereof for which a demolition permit application has been received. The committee then has 60 days to review the property for cultural heritage value to determine if it is worthy of designation. If it is, the committee will make a recommendation to council, and council will have the authority to make a final decision. The committee is not obliged to advise property owners that their property is on the registry. However, the committee is prepared to do so. Council is requested to consider the above at the council meeting of, right now I'm showing it at November 23rd, but that date to be determined. And then, so along with that resolution, I'm also going to attach the list of properties as well as attach the section in the Heritage Act that explains how the registry works, just so that if the councillors don't remember from last time, they can brush up on it by reading that section again. So that's the resolution. Does anyone have any thoughts or comments or on the wording of that?
That sounds a lot better.
Sounds fine. Sorry.
Yeah, sounds good.
Sounds
Yeah, I
fine.
think it's a little more thorough than the previous one from a month ago. So, okay, so I will send that to Fred to put on the next council meeting agenda, and I will attend that council. Actually, I'm away next week, but whatever, Fred and I'll figure out whatever date is appropriate for it, and I will make sure that I'm at that council meeting to answer any questions if the councillors have some.
Do you need a motion? Do you need a motion to go ahead with that?
I'm not sure. I think we did do a motion previously to go ahead with it, but maybe we should do another one just that now that the wording's changed to be safe, I suppose. Well, since I wrote it, I'll make a motion to accept it and approve it. And can I have someone second it, please?
I'll second it.
Sure. Okay.
Thank you.
Barbara.
Thank you, Barbara. All right. Are we all in agreement? So it's carried then. We'll say it's carried. Excuse me. Okay, the next item is the Globe Restaurant update on the procurement of the plaque. I will speak to that because I believe the way it was left, Sharon emailed me and said that she would be willing to stick handle getting the plaque done. But I have not, I was going to try and get some wording together for it. I haven't had a chance to do that yet. However, I did go and look up who we used for our signage on the last designation. And it is a company out of Newmarket called Sign Nation. And I've been in touch with the owner there. He is preparing a quote for us. He said it's going to be about $1,000. I think it's about $900, if I remember correctly. But it's a bit dependent on how much wording we do. But our last quote from him for the last designation was about $800 or $900. So I think once we get the official wording sorted out and a definitive hard quote from him, then we can make a motion to approve the expense, maybe at the next meeting. Sorry,
Is that
someone was saying
Out of
something.
our budget?
Does it come out of our budget?
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Okay, next item
Or can
is
we
the,
just go ahead and approve it now? As long as it's not over a certain
yeah,
amount?
sure,
Because
I'm
it's
in favor of
around
that.
for a
What does
while,
everyone,
to a
Barbara and
maximum of,
Corinne, say
That we get it
maximum of
into this year's
1,000?
budget instead of carrying it forward.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
okay.
Let's do that. Okay, so can I have a motion? Maybe Gloria, you could make the motion for, let's say, a maximum of $1,000.
Well, let's say maybe a bit more given it'll be tax as well. So should we say 1,100?
I'd even go
I'm
1,500, just,
How much? Sorry.
I'd go 1,500, so if it's going to show up in the 2021 budget, it doesn't matter because we haven't spent any money anyhow.
Okay.
okay.
Okay. To a maximum 1,500. Yeah.
Someone to second?
Maureen?
There we go. All right, all in favor?
Yep.
Carried. Very good. Okay, so 1,500. I'm sure it won't cost that, but you're right. At least it'll make sure that it gets done.
It's been hanging around for a while. Yes.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, good.
Okay, Gloria, the next item is yours about the designation of your church and manse.
Rectory.
Rectory, sorry. What's the difference between a manse and a rectory?
Well, for years I called it a manse, and Wayne Townsend corrected me. Gloria, it's a rectory. Anglican churches have rectories. Okay.
Oh, really?
So,
Okay.
yeah, that was only maybe 20 years ago that he corrected me. I'd gone
I
on
never
for
knew
the
that.
first 20 years calling it a manse. Anyway, okay, so the update on that is I'm a bit embarrassed. I feel sad about it, but we're not going to proceed with the designation, as we've learned the cost of insurance for designated heritage properties. So this agent has told us, we have a new agent, and she's told us that it could be double or triple that we have to pay in terms of insurance. So my kiddos are, Shell and Laura live next door, and they're not keen on just agreeing to that big price increase. So anyway, I'm not finished with it, but I'm not doing anything right now. Even this insurance company that we have, and we've gone to a new insurance company. I've been at TD for years and years, and then again, there was a big increase when we put in the wood stove next door. Anyway. So we got a new agent, and who Laura has dealt with for years. Her parents, their business, Shell and Laura's business has insurance with them. Anyway, so one of the first questions she asked with this new application is this, does it have designation, a heritage designation? Well, not yet, but we're moving in that direction. She said, well, okay. I'm just going to warn you that'll be quite an increase in what you'll be asked to pay. Anyway, so Laura went ahead and finished that, and it sounded good. And I was going to call her and just clarify more about why is it so much more? And she said they only have two companies that actually insure heritage properties. And so there's not that many. And typically the costs are double or triple. It just increases by that much because of the nature of the work, the quality of the work. It takes longer. You get the materials and the specialty to create some of the beauty that we have here. So, but there is one company in Waterloo I'm going to check out. But for now, we're not proceeding, sorry to say. And this just happened like within days of our last meeting. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm, really disappointed to hear that, Gloria, but I totally understand your, the issues around that. And I think it's the same kind of issues that we've heard from other people who have been looking at designation. It is something that heritage committees have to address. And it's a tough one because, we can't get the insurance companies to change their minds, even though it seems like sort of an unfounded policy on their part. But Gloria and I were speaking about this last week, and I was saying how I don't feel that the insurance companies have a right to do this. Because, for instance, if the house burns down, if you have a designated house and it burns down, well, the designation is gone then. I mean, there's nothing to
It's like that,
designate
yeah.
then.
Mhm.
So, and if you rebuild it, well, you're rebuilding it with, you might rebuild it exactly the same. So aesthetically, it looks identical, but the actual heritage, the intrinsic heritage of it is gone. It can look the same, but
Lost. Mhm.
you're using new bricks. It's just a copy. So it's not heritage. It's not worthy of designation anymore if it's a replica. Um, so for the insurance companies to say that you have to pay more, because the house was designated, it makes no sense to me, because to rebuild the house, whether it's designated or not, is going to cost them the exact same amount. It doesn't cost more because the house is it doesn't cost more to build a replica because the house was designated. So I don't see their logic at all, and it's very frustrating that they do this. Yes, Corinne.
I'm gonna chime in because I'm just gonna say I'm a vice president of claims for an insurance company. So unfortunately, you're totally in my wheelhouse here, and insurance companies don't stand up and speak for themselves. So I'm just going to, add a little bit of flavor when you talk about restoration, and there's a huge cost differential in when you look at, whilst you're saying it is a replica, yes, it is, because, the obvious answer is nobody will carry, I smash up my 1972 Pinto and the insurance company doesn't carry, a whole yard of 1972 Pintos they can give you back. So when you look at a house as an example, and you can take any attribute. When you look at a heritage property, you have the intricacy of how, some of the different work is hand carved and or, manipulated in a way, and they have to replicate that. So whilst it is still a replica of what was there, they still have to give that. They have to give you that gingerbread cut out of wood, styling that you may have had on your house where, under normal circumstances, they would literally look at you and say that, they're not paying to do that. So it's when we look at, heritage homes in a general sense, when I look at an older home, it's been renovated over, and 9 times out of 10, it doesn't have one flooring system. It has two or three that have been added onto, and they have to start to restore and or fix some of those issues, those timbers, where you may have had, um, when I look at my barn as an example, we've done some restoration work on it. And when you look at, I can tell you the insurance company would look at my barn for a quote, and the first thing they say is that barn is a total loss. We can't fix it simply because I have tree trunks that hold up sections of my barn. I don't have 4x4 posts. I have 12-inch round trees or, 18-inch trees that hold up the barn. So when you look at the structural integrity of what's in a heritage home or heritage outbuildings versus, that house they put up in 3 days in town, made out of, cardboard, quite frankly, and slap some brick veneer on, you have real brick on a heritage home. They have to repair and or replace with real brick. They're not going to give you a veneer. So that's a big cost differential, right? Same as your flooring, same as, so many different things. You have massive cost increases where they can't cut corners. And so it's a replica, but it's a real brick. It's not a veneer. So the cost increase on a total loss, if you insure your house to $500,000, it's probably going to cost them $900 to $1 million to replace that same home versus that veneered finish home. So it's same at your specialty windows. Your windows are all specialty sizes. It's not your standard, 2x3 window. So there's a lot of different characteristics and traits that are in a home that we take for granted that just cost a lot more.
But if
So
you're,
that's my plug.
but if you're a, if
That's
you
essentially what
live
the
in a,
agent was saying to me. Yeah.
but if you live in an old house, like say, you know, I live, not now, but I used to live in an old Victorian house. And if a tree falls on it and damages the gingerbread, I'm assuming that the insurance company is going to pay to put up matching gingerbread. They're not going to put up a gingerbread that doesn't match the existing gingerbread, right?
They would, and the problem with that, it's going to cost a lot more for them to do, right? Versus it there's a lot of, I guess, differences when you look at how they would repair so if I look at that scenario and you know, we're getting a little in the weeds on this, but as an example, if I look at today's building code and standard of someone who has a vinyl sided house, and if a tree falls on a vinyl sided house, they're going to fix that one side that got dented, because they can go to Home Hardware and they can match that siding, and they're just going to stick it up, and that's what you get. Now with a heritage home, if that same tree falls on you know, the one side of your house, they're going to have to replace it, not with a brick veneer. They're going to have to put a real brick in, but now they have to try to match that brick. And if they can't do that, they're siding your entire house to match. So, you know, when you now
But
look at the cost differential from a real brick sided home, 4 sides, versus I stuck up a little bit more vinyl siding, there's a huge cost differential.
But they would have to do that whether the house was designated or not. I mean, if I live in a Victorian home that's not designated and a tree falls on the house and damages the wall, the insurance company is going to have to pay to match the brick,
They
regardless of
won't do
whether the
that,
house is
Kirsten. They won't do that.
designated or not.
They won't
Well,
do that. They'll
You
match
might
it to
not
but
best
be
they,
able
quality.
to
They'll
find
match
the
that
brick
to
either.
best quality. That's right. They'll match it to best quality of like, kind, and quality at today's standard versus the workmanship and quality that you had of yesteryear. So there is a huge difference to, we're really sorry, we'll work with you to try to maybe put a pattern on, but they're not going to give you the same quality and attention that you would
so
get with a designated house.
So
But
are you
if,
saying that my insurance company would just patch the wall with a different colored brick and say, "Oh well, you're out of luck"?
No,
That's all
no,
we're willing to do?
they would, well, they would work with you to try to make it work, but yeah, they're not going to come out and they're going to try to match it as best as they can. But how do they match without replacing absolutely everything? How do they match
Well,
4
this is
sides
what
of
I'm
a
saying.
house?
This is what I'm saying is they would do their best to match what's there,
Yep, yep.
regardless of whether the house is designated or not. I mean, it doesn't matter whether the house is designated. They're still going to try and do their best job to match what's there.
But on a
Whether you
designated
say you,
house, they're not going to try to fit something in, whereas they will with a non-designated. It's the same as a roof, right? It's point of view, and they're going to look at, you know, if you have, say you have oh, uh, wood shake, right, which is something very common on those older houses. 9 times out of 10, they're going to do a repair job on the wood shake versus repair the entire or replace the entirety. So there's
right,
a
but they're
lot of
still going to,
intricacies,
but they're
and
still going to use wood shake though, right? They're not going to use a different
oh yeah, of
product
course,
to do
yeah,
the repair.
but
Well, that's my point
based
is,
on
but
today's
that's my point.
standard,
this doesn't make
But
sense,
it
though, even if you're
yeah,
paying the 3 times more, they're still going to have to find the materials to duplicate or to replace,
to match.
to
Yeah.
match. We had when the insurance guy came in to take a look at our house, he told us there was no way in hell that they'd ever be able to replace the stone in ours, which is about it's 2.5 feet thick. But I noticed there was no additional cost. I found we were getting good price money for our values. So I'm really going to look into this too, because this is quite curious. I can understand them wanting to increase your property for putting in a wood stove, because we had a
Yeah.
of the time going
Sure.
through with sending them photographs of the wood stove and the measurements between the wall and what, et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense that they would want to at least 3 times the amount for a heritage home. It doesn't.
No,
See,
I agree.
on a repair, it's a difference. But when you look at a total loss scenario, and they have to, as I said, the perfect cost differential to look at is if in a total loss scenario, they're going to build your house to today's standard. So first of all, they're not going to give you that 2-foot wall, that thick wall. They're not
But
going to give you a brick, like a solid brick house. They're going to give you a veneer. There's a lot of
but
areas where, and they're going to call that, building to today's standard versus to what you had. And that's where your cost differential comes in. Let's face it, at the end of the day, insurance companies aren't worried about you putting in a $10,000, a tree scuffed the front of my house and the gingerbread was broken in a window. They're more worried about, I have a wood stove and I burnt my entire house down. So there's a big difference to, those types of repairs versus the replacement. And the replacement of those aspects are where you're going to find the big cost differentials.
Corinne, if it's a total loss, the designation is removed, in which case the cost to replace it becomes it's irrelevant. It's not costing the insurance company anymore. They're going to build to today's standards to replace. So why would you pay more for insurance for a designated house? It's not in the end, if the house burns down, it's costing the insurance company the same amount to rebuild it to today's standards of whether it was designated or not, because the designation is gone. They're rebuilding it to today's standards. So
Well,
it's not
I'd have
costing
to
them
look in.
anymore.
I'd have to look into that because I find that hard to believe that they're not going to build to a different standard for a designated house that was burnt down versus. But I can tell you, we'll do it. We'll certainly take it offline, but we can. There's more than enough horror stories I can share where the costs are astronomical to try to you're building to a totally different standard, where in today's standard, a 2x4, which isn't true. It's usually a 2x3.5, or, it's not a true 2x4 by all standards. You can go and measure one in the store. And whereas your home, when you look at your heritage home and how, the wood or the intricacy around your windows, around, some of the detailing, you're not going to find that in today's standard. And if you do, it's built out of chipboard, or it's a cutout and then painted. So there's a totally different methodology in terms of the how you're going to put together heritage materials versus today's standard, where they're, as I said, if they want to come up with a 4x4, they're going to stick two 2x4s together and call that a post versus, and then slap some paint on it, right? Whereas in a heritage home, you're going to find a true cut, board that's in your home that's holding things together. So I'm trying to give examples that are, fairly easy to, to visualize, but you just don't get that same quality and craftsmanship in, primarily in your woodworking or in your stone. It's the same as try to find someone who will, in a heritage home, who will do a true, concrete finish, right? The stonemasonry work. They're not going to give you that anymore. They're going to give you a stone board and basically put that up and throw some what do you call it? Some, like a stone board onto and call that a fireplace. They're not going to they're not going to bring rock by rock and piece them all into and make a beautiful, artwork that you have in your heritage home. It's a totally different standard of building altogether.
Well, it's a complex
It's complex.
conversation.
I'm sorry. It's just
And
been
we,
an interesting, I didn't imagine that this would have this outcome, for us just changing insurance companies and being asked that question and getting that information. And it is complex. It's disappointing. I hope I didn't waste your time, but yeah.
no, Gloria, it's one of these things that comes up all the time with
Heard
Heritage
this
Committees. So
before. Yeah.
it's a good conversation to explore for sure.
Every
And I
time
am
you
going to
throw
check
a rock in the water, it makes ripples, and you have to investigate, Gloria, all of those ripples. And insurance costs are just a ripple, right?
Yes. Anyway, we're going to take care of these properties. I know that. And if I'm not here, Jill
Yes,
and Laura will
exactly.
take care of them.
They'll be well looked after whether they're
They'll be,
designated or not. So
yeah, we're committed.
that's
Yes,
great, Gloria.
yes.
Okay, next item of business is the, which
Yeah,
we
I'd like
touched
you
on
to come
already,
just a
the
second. I
budget.
want to just say one thing,
Oh,
just
yeah?
one thing. Kristen, can you see me now?
No.
No,
You still can't see me. Oh, my
no.
screen, I'm moving and oh dear, oh gosh. Yeah, so when we can get together again, maybe you can come and have a meeting here. You
That
can
would be
see
great.
my face.
We used to have our heritage meetings once a year. We would have them at one of the committee members' homes.
Yeah, okay.
And it was really nice. And we would make a potluck out of it and everyone would bring food. And it was a very fun, casual meeting. And we got to see someone's home. And that would be a nice thing to institute again once COVID's over.
I would like that.
That'd be fun.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay, the budget allocation. Barbara, did you want to elaborate on what you were saying earlier on this topic at all?
Basically, what I was thinking about is even though we can't meet publicly, I don't know whether they're planning on doing an outdoor Winterfest or what, but if we ever have an indoor presentation, there's a couple of items that I think we should have for outreach, such as a tablecloth with the name on it and, I guess some more visuals. But I also think now that we've mentioned the plaque, that I should really do some suggestions and get some inclusions in the 2021 budget so that doesn't come out all out of our 2022. So the money is spent. We can't, as far as I know, we can't do a carryover. So if we don't spend any money this year, it's not going to be added on to our 22 budget. So I'm suggesting that everybody thinks about different things that we need to have to make us look good in a public meeting. And I know, oh gollies, Cosette was somewhat concerned about meeting in public anyhow, but that I'm hoping forwarding along that we are going to eventually be able to meet in public. And I think we should have things that present us in a favorable light. The vests were fine. I was wondering if we needed more brochures. Do we pay to get them printed, or can we get Mono to pick up the budget for that? Can we get Mono to do the framing of the pictures, or do we need a budget for that? So anybody's got any ideas other than mine, please send them forth and I will send out an email reminding you to do so. I spoke to Fred about the budget allocations. He believes that they're probably not going to meet until January on this, but I think we should have it on their table as soon as possible. And I also think that we should push last year's budget, which we haven't spent. Any ideas?
We, because of COVID, we didn't spend any money this year, but in the past, as long as I can remember, we've always had a budget of $10,000, and that was based on, I think, doing 2 designations a year and some other miscellaneous costs that are regular occurrences. I'd have to look up some of our old budgets to see what items we had in there and what prices we carried for them. But two designations pretty much would eat up about $8,000 to $10,000 right there. We don't get our budget isn't rolled over. It starts fresh at $10,000 each year. And I think all those items you just mentioned, Barbara, are all good things to put in there. I think, the tablecloth and the everything to do with any kind of designation. Anyway, sorry, I can't remember, but as you were naming some things, I thought, oh yeah, those are all great things we need to have in the budget. But yes, and also if you could send out that email to each of us, that would be really helpful. And maybe in the email, put your list of things that you've thought out of to get us all thinking in the same direction. And we can each reply to that email with our own ideas about what should be in the budget or what could be in the budget this year. But again, my feeling is that we should again ask for a $10,000 budget. But let's first see what kind of list we come up with.
Okey doke.
And the other thing you mentioned, Barbara, with regards to the marketing materials, not to throw Andrew under the bus, but the township actually did all of the photocopying right in the town office, so we didn't incur any costs for the marketing materials to be printed.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Really handy.
And what about a calendar? I was hoping tonight to see whether we might have some photos of the streams. But I don't know, and I didn't ask whether there's more photos of doing a calendar.
I'm sure Ralph has a lot of photos. My thought on that is I don't think a stream is going to, a photograph of a photograph of a stream I think is going to seem very flat. And if you have 12 photographs of streams, they might not be that exciting. Could be completely wrong, but a stream is a hard thing to photograph and have it,
Well, I
exude
guess
any
I
kind of
was thinking-
energy.
Yeah, well, and depends, I guess, what kind of photos. If there's, different photos of the different seasons. It won't be a National Geographic calendar, I don't think, but it's us, it's Mono.
Oh, my.
Well, I don't know. I don't know what photos he's got.
Well, I mean, who am I to
Well,
say?
usually
Maybe
there's-
the photos are stunning and, calendar worthy, but I
It's
shouldn't
another way
speak
to
before
kind
I
of
see them.
promote. So, yes. Do you want me to ask?
Yeah, and maybe there's if we did do the stream thing, maybe one of the pages is the map. And that way, and when people turn to the picture of the stream, they can look on the map to see where that exact picture was taken. That helps them to learn the geography a little bit of these waterways, as opposed to just having 12 pictures, but actually having a map so they can see where these pictures are, just for context. Anyway, I mean, Gloria, if you're keen on this on the stream calendar, maybe ask Ralph to send us 12 of his best pictures, and we could take a look at them and decide if they're, calendar worthy.
What do you think, Barbara, Corinne, Sharon?
I tend to agree with Kirsten. I don't know that I'd do a whole calendar on streams because it would be hard to differentiate them. Now I think though your idea to shake it up and maybe, have a picture or two of a stream, and then maybe as we talked about earlier as well, a couple of the heritage hills or some of the more charismatic features of Mono, like, the outlook point on third line,
Yeah.
and then maybe, the map or something that kind of brings them all together, I think would be a really great idea. But if we brought maybe different, and to your point, the different seasons. So, in the October issue, we have the fall scene of, overlooking the park, or, and just have all of the different seasons also brought into the different views of Mono, I guess, might be a good idea as well.
That's a nice idea. We could do landscapes of Mono, and we could even have people send in their best photos of Mono and make it sort of like a little, community initiative, or even a photograph competition of the
That's a good
best
idea.
seasonal pictures of Mono. That'd be fun.
That's a great idea. Yeah, and get everyone to participate.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, but how much time do we have?
Well, we don't have,
I don't,
Well, maybe for
that's
this
true.
year is to see what photos are already around available, what Andrew has, what the town has.
Yeah,
There's some
scenes of
nice
Mono.
photos up, some nice photos on the website.
Yeah.
So
I
all I'm
think
saying is I think that whatever.
I think we are running tight on time, obviously. And I think that I really like this idea, and I like the idea of the public submitting, having an opportunity to submit their best pictures of Mono. And you're right, we don't have enough time to do that right now, but I don't want to rush through it now and cannibalize the idea from next year when we actually would have time to do something really cool that way. So maybe we don't do it this year and we put it in next year's budget and really do something great with a lot of public input, rather than sort of scrambling for pictures that are just on file somewhere. Anyway,
And if you
just a
kind of
thought.
advertise it starting in January, just to get all those seasonal pictures in, and just keep reminding it, say every quarter, so that the idea stays fresh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that
Gloria,
idea,
what do you
Kirsten.
think?
That's a good idea.
yeah.
Yeah, I think
Who would
that
do
would be a lot
that?
of
The
fun.
town do it for us?
Yeah, they did our
Right.
calendar last year. You mean Gloria, are you talking about the actual publication, like producing it?
No, gathering those photos. Would we, this committee do that? Would we
I think we would.
promote that?
And I
We'd
think
have to.
maybe what we'd have to do is put something in the tax flyer advertising it with our email address that people can submit their photos to. But I think we would have
Now,
to be
would
the
we
ones
want it to be a bit of a heritage event? Event, where the heritage committee, cultural
I'm afraid
heritage, building heritage, sorry,
I'm
natural
afraid if we
heritage.
try and I think the focus should be on just, scenes of Mono. I think if we try and make it too heritage, that will, people might not, uh, they might not want to send things in because they don't really know what would constitute a legitimate heritage picture. So it might cut down a lot of the participation if we say it has to be heritage related. Whereas if we say it's just landscapes, or it doesn't even have to be landscapes, it could be like photograph of a barn in the mist or something, just beautiful Mono moments, I think we'll get a lot more feedback than telling people it has to be heritage related. But if we can say, if you want to put in a heritage element like your old bank barn, or who knows, or your house or something, that's fine. It doesn't just have to be landscapes. It's basically I think just an open call to any pictures of Mono that people think are special, or that they've captured something special.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we can think about it. Yeah,
I like it.
okay.
All right, great idea. I think that's it. Does anyone want to bring up any other new items? Okay. Our next meeting is Monday, December 6th, which is good because this was just a little short. It was just so quick since our last meeting. But anyway, okay. So Monday, December 6th at 7 o'clock. And I will make a motion to adjourn this meeting. And could I have someone second it? Thank you, Corinne. At 8:17 p.m. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll get
Nice
this
to see
camera
everyone.
thing figured
Thanks.
out.
Yeah, we'd like to see you, Gloria, and your beautiful home.
Well, Laura came and she thought she fixed it, but it didn't happen. So I look forward to seeing you next time. Okay? All of you.
Good.
Thank you. Thank
Okay,
you.
everyone, have a good week.
Good
Thank you.
night.
Have a good night.